Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today I'm going to be comparing the two different styles known as Shoujo and Shonen. Now, Shoujo, for those of you who don't know, is the word for the female-oriented Japanese manga style, typically covering romance, that sort of thing, in comic book form. And then the Shonen would be more oriented towards boys, typically action. Of course, these are, big generalizations, but there are seemingly these two distinct styles, and so I wanted to compare the two of them. Now, I'm going to go through time-lapse real quick and set up some basic guidelines for drawing the two head shapes, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so you can see I put in a couple of vertical lines here, and then these diagonal lines, these are eventually going to form the sides of the cheeks heading up to create the shape of the head. So this first one I'll do all real time so you can kind of follow along if you like. Now notice I've put a line here that's just slightly above the midway point. I'd say a touch closer to the top line, which is going to be the top of the head, than it is to the bottom line, which is going to be the bottom of the chin. So let's go ahead and start working on this. I'm going to go ahead and begin making a secondary line here that sort of hooks up with this line that I'd put in there to begin with. This down here is the line of the jaw, and I would encourage you to pay real close attention to the angle that that line is heading in. Sometimes you can even look at this blank space here to help yourself get that right. And then from here to here, you're really just going to create, as best you can, a curving shape. Now this is all just guidelines to give you a sense of the where the top of the head would be if this guy had, his head shaved or something like that. But the truth is this line will be completely erased at the end. It just sort of helps to get the basics in place. Now, I'm going to go ahead in time-lapse and draw a similar shape over here. That's going to be for our shonen head, but I'll do that in time-lapse. Okay, so you can see we got the two different head shapes here. This one kind of narrower from side to side, this one a touch wider. And then I'm going to go ahead now and start adding in extra guidelines. Sorry, there's so many guidelines involved here, but I find that getting the facial features properly placed is a very delicate procedure, basically. One line in the wrong place and you end up with quite a different drawing. So I'm going to add in just a couple more lines to place the eyes and the nose, the mouth, and so forth, and then I'll be back to sort of explain the differences between them. So the key difference here between these two drawings is that this line, which is going to be the lower part of the eyes, is a bit lower than this line here. Generally speaking, the eyes on the shonen character will be smaller. The shoujo character, the eyes will be larger. The nose is in the exact same place. But the mouth, I have found, is maybe a touch closer to the nose on the shoujo version than the shonen version. That, I'm a little less sure about that in terms of going from one artist to another. But definitely the eyes, I think you'll see that there is a difference between the two styles. So let's stop with all the guidelines and get into actually drawing in these facial features. I'm going to zoom in and we're going to spend the first part of the video drawing the shoujo face. Alright, so I'm going to begin by drawing a basic outline of each of the eyes to help you place them. And this one is kind of resting more or less on the lower line that we drew, but it is not reaching that upper line. That upper line really is going to be more for the placement of the eyebrows. But I would urge you to pay attention to the space between this central line and the sort of end of your what do you call that? The tear duct area over here. So I'm repeating. A lot of times I hear people have frustrations with, I draw one eye, it looks great, and then the other eye doesn't match the first eye. Well, doing these guidelines is really your best bet of solving that problem. Sort of measuring things out in advance. I know it's a pain and a lot of people don't like to do it. But it is a great way of solving that problem. Now I'm going in and putting the eyebrows pointing down. You want to focus on the angle of each one of these lines. Focus also on the space between the lines so that they don't actually reach each other. That would be the unibrow. And who knows, maybe you want to draw a dude with a unibrow. Hey, some people find that attractive. But we're not going to do that for this guy. This is he's supposed to be a bit of a pretty boy, to be honest, as we move along here. So I'm drawing the outline of the irises quite large in terms of the amount of space that they take up within these eyes. You know, you're always looking at the balance between the iris and the whites of the eyes. And maybe before I step away from doing the eyes, I'm going to add just one more line here for the upper eyelid, which I find in shoujo style often extends all the way across the upper eye. The upper eye lash line. You'll have this eyelid fold line that extends all the way across there. Now, I am going to, before going into the details of the eyes, I am going to move down to drawing the nose, which can be quite minimalist, and it really sometimes just looks like a vertical line with just a little bit of a triangular area attached to it. And we're going to come over to drawing the mouth now. There is a certain width to this line going across. You're always paying attention again to where the line stops in relation to the edge of the jaw. And one thing that I think really separates the shoujo approach from the shonen approach is that you will often see a fairly delineated lower lip in the shoujo style. Now, I just want to add in here, because sometimes people get the wrong idea, that I think there is only one shoujo style. No, certainly not. And even more variety probably within the term shonen. I'm going to add one more line, and even though you don't see it going all the way across, it basically does go all the way across to the other one. This is the hairline. And so I'm just going to drop that in there and go ahead while I'm at it. Sorry, it doesn't really show up in your video screen right now, but I did both of them at the same time. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the hair, but let's go ahead and just put in a few guidelines. My idea with this video was to show the same character, essentially the same character drawn in these two different styles. Now, the hairstyle is not identical, but they will both be sort of parted down the middle. So I'm just getting in the first basic guidelines of that. And this guy's going to have this very flowing, elegant, idealized looking hair. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on the video getting into the hair at this stage, but I'll put in just a few guidelines to give you the basic idea. Notice how full-bodied this hair is. He's obviously using the volumizing shampoo. But it comes well off of the top of the head, and I'm going to go ahead and just put in a few more guidelines over here that, you know, eventually are going to help me get this all into place. He almost is starting to look like he's from the disco era or something, with this flowing hair parted down the center. But the other guy is also going to have his hair parted down the center, but you'll see that the hair is less flowing, more sort of spiky in the shonen style. Let's go ahead and get the ears while we're at it. And I find that on both of these, the ears come in at around the same place. Not reaching all the way down to the bottom of the nose, but getting pretty close, you know, in terms of a measurement there. And in what I looked at as I was looking at different shoujo drawings, I noticed that the shoujo version of the ears, they kind of came out a little more from the head. You know, I don't know, like, you know how some guys' ears really stand out a lot and they become self-conscious? Oh, my ears, they stand out too much. But there's a stylistic thing for shoujo where apparently that is kind of part of the look, you know, and so you have these ears that are coming out quite a lot. And then we get over to the shonen and you'll see that it's not nearly as pronounced. Now let's look at the width of the neck. Where this point where it bends, you know, where it comes off of that first diagonal and starts coming down to the chin, that can help you find the location of the neck in the SHOJO style. SHOJO style, that's not how that word is pronounced. In the shoujo style, the neck is fairly thin from side to side. It's going to be a bit thicker in the shonen style. And then I'll go ahead and get in these extra lines here that will eventually help me draw the hair. Like I said, I don't want to get too much. This sort of happens with every video I do that I have to say, this isn't really about the hair. It's more about everything else except the hair. But the truth is, once you get into drawing the hair, you could spend the whole video talking about that. I want to quickly do the collar of the shirt. I'm going to do this in time-lapse just to save a little time. In fact, I'm going to have to refocus, I think, this whole video thing before we move on to doing the shonen version. Alright, so I've got the collar of the shirt in place, and what I want to do, I've pulled out my trusty black Prismacolor. I'm going to start doing some of the final line work on this before actually I move over to the shonen version. And so I thought I'd do at least some of this in real time, just to sort of help you if you want to follow along. But the main thing I want to talk about here is the degree to which this hairstyle is very flowy, if that's a word. The lines of the hair have to be very smooth in the shoujo style, and I must admit that I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage doing this video because I'm not able to spin the paper around. I should probably do a video in which I show you the degree to which I do actually try to spin the page around to help me create the best flowing lines when I'm doing a drawing that is not for a video like this. But I think you get the sense of how I'm doing my best to make these very smooth lines, and that's something that's just sort of comes with practice. I think a lot of people, I hear from a lot of people who are like, man, I find it very hard to make smooth lines. My hand always seems to be shaking, and how do you do it? And I don't think there's any secret method apart from just practice. And you may find that some people have a steadier hand than others, and that it's a natural ability that can be acquired only up to a certain point. I don't have a super steady hand, contrary to people's... People have this idea of me being some kind of master artist based on these videos. It is certainly not the case. I do the best I can, but some people really do have almost like supernaturally steady hands, and I truly don't know how they do that. I mean, I think it is sort of they just have this innate ability to have those lines flow. Whoops. Can you believe it? I forgot to unplug the phone again. Man, you'd think I'd have this stuff down by now. You know what I want to do at this point is refocus the camera so as to get you a closer look at the eyes. Because, of course, the eyes, the differences between the two versions of eyes between these two styles is maybe the most important thing. So let's go ahead and refocus. Okay, so we've moved in here. I'm going to do one of these eyes real time, and the other's going to have to be time-lapse. Just to keep things moving. But basically, those of you who are familiar with the shoujo style, I'm sure you will have noticed that the eyelashes of the boy male characters are considerably thicker. It almost looks like he's wearing mascara or something. It's all part of the style. In fact, I think really in the shoujo style, people will feel that the male characters have a lot of feminine characteristics in terms of the way they're drawn, and that's just sort of a tradition that goes back in the particularly the romance comics, it seems to me, of having, and the people who are not that familiar with the style will be like, I can't tell the difference between the male characters and the female characters. They look exactly the same, which is an exaggeration, to be sure. But definitely, yeah, the shoujo artists do not shy away from letting their male characters be kind of, what you would call the pretty boy type characters, having a little more of a feminine look than a ruggedly masculine look. It can be tricky, though, if you go overboard and go too far with it, then the character really does start to look like a female character, and then, you're kind of in trouble in terms of your storytelling. So I would say, be cautious. Err on the side of less mascara rather than too much. In fact, some people may look at this and say, you've gone too far, Krilly. You've gone too far. I'm going to go ahead and quickly do the nose and the mouth. I think to keep this video from going too long, I am going to have to keep things moving. But we're pretty much done with the major aspects of this drawing anyway. Remember what I said about the lower lip? We are defining it quite a bit here in a way that we will not do when we go over to the Shonen version. Notice the point of the chin here, fairly pointy. A little bit more squared off we're going to find when we go over to the Shonen version. But I do feel like I've spent plenty of time on this first one. I think it may be time to just go ahead and move over to doing the Shonen version.